New Year's resolutions, first and foremost, really are an invention of capitalism that serve to fuel overconsumption and like especially diet culture bullshit. So okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name is Mickey. I'm a therapist and we talk about therapy things on this channel. And today we're talking about New Year's resolutions. If you don't know, I'm not a super fan of New Year's resolutions. However, I think there is a world where, first of all, we should validate that people are going to set them anyways, but also where we can talk about New Year's resolutions being a positive thing. And so I want to talk today about New Year's resolution failures, specifically for ADHD people, because this is an area of contention, especially as a clinician. This is a thing that comes up a lot. And so I have some advice for you about, first of all, why your New Year's resolutions might not be working if you have ADHD, and also how to like work around that. So let's just get into that. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk to you about as a reason why your goals are probably failing is that a year is just too long. I think it's really important for us to honor that as people with ADHD, we have an interest and novelty-driven nervous system, which means that as the newness around a particular thing, like a goal, for example, fades, so will your goal-driven behavior. This is really difficult for a lot of people, and I do want to validate that, right? Like it feels really bad. We're going to talk about failure and rejection sensitivity dysphoria later, but I do want to honor that like this is obviously a painful and difficult thing. However, that's not to say that there's not a workaround. Now, like I want to be clear also, I said at the top of the video, I'm not the biggest fan of New Year's resolutions, but the advice that I give my clients all the time is that if we're going to be setting a goal for the year, we want to be adding stuff rather than subtracting stuff. So just keep that in mind. But also when we talk about setting a New Year's resolution for ADHD specifically, keep a shorter time frame in mind. One of the articles, I'll link some stuff in the description for you guys, but one of the articles that I was looking at in preparation for this video talked about setting a theme for New Year's resolutions, which I think is such a useful piece of advice for neurodivergent folks, and also just like good advice generally, if we're being honest. But I think reframing a New Year's resolution to be about like increasing our involvement or like adding goodness into our life around a particular theme is a lot more helpful and also just like healthier when we talk about your brain. So for example, obviously, I'm not a fucking fan of like weight loss as a New Year's resolution. I'm not suggesting that anybody do that, to be clear, but the facts are that most people set New Year's resolutions around like health and fitness. Weight loss is usually what it is. So for the sake of making an example out of this, instead of making our New Year's resolution about a particular fitness goal or about like, you know, going for a run every day or going to the gym or getting a gym membership or things like that, setting a New Year's resolution around the goal of health generally, and then breaking that up into smaller time frames, right? Where like for this week, I'm going to focus on a hydration goal, focus on adding more water into my life. And for next week, I'm going to focus on adding some time outside, right? I want to be in the sunshine because I know that vitamin D is good for my body and also good for my mood, right? And then the week after that, I'm going to go exercise or incorporate more fiber into my diet or whatever. Any number of different like health-based goals that you can have on a shorter time frame, are going to be a lot easier for you to accomplish with a novelty-based nervous system because we love the newness. It's exciting and fun for us. But B, it's also going to help you maintain that feeling of like progress and success, which is also inherently motivating when we talk about goals. The second reason that your goals might be failing is because you might be trying to New Year's resolution your way out of a neurodivergency. I think this is important to talk about. We've talked about this before on the channel, but when we talk about goal setting around ADHD and neurodivergency, it's just really important for us to honor that your brain is quite literally divergent from the norm, right? Which is like shitty and harmful rhetoric, but like you get it. It's important for us to accept and like practice an attitude of compassion about the fact that our brain is just different and that that's fine, right? Oftentimes we get shoved into this neurotypical box of like, it should be this way, you should be doing things in a particular way. And that sucks. It's like a shitty and mean fucking thing to say to people. But B, it's just simply not going to work, right? Like whether we agree or disagree or like or don't like don't get me wrong, I'm very much familiar with the feeling of frustration and self-loathing that comes along with your brain taking your plans and fucking your shit up. But whether you feel that way or you don't, the facts of the matter are that your brain is neurodivergent, and it's important for us to figure out, again, like a workaround so that you can still achieve goals, live your life in a way that's comfortable for you, have healthy relationships, whatever, without trying to like life hack your way out of your brain just being the way that it is, right? Oftentimes we're just going to be much better served by accepting that like my brain is neurodivergent. This is, the fact of the matter. These are the bounds within I have to operate. And also I can still, pursue the things that I'm passionate about and like make meaningful change around particular behaviors and things like that. The other thing that's of note with this is that it's very common for folks with ADHD to try to devise like systems and like, life hacks to sort of work around work around our symptoms. Sorry, I'm a baby. To work around our symptoms. And a lot of times this ends up meaning that we spend most, if not all of our time masking, which sucks. It's also important to note here that there's a very high comorbidity between folks with autism and ADHD. Between 50 to 70% of people who've been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder also have ADHD. And so keep that in mind also, because masking is a really big issue when we talk about autism spectrum disorder. So when we talk about goal setting, right, I want to encourage you to be aware that if you're trying to set goals to like eradicate a particular way that you are, again, A, that's not really going to work with your neurology, but B, it's not very helpful, right? Like it's not a kind thing to say to yourself. And like autistic burnout, neurodivergent burnout are very real things that are very, very difficult to work through. And again, in this realm, we're just much better served in accepting our brains the way that they are, and trying to create a life in an environment that's supportive of that, rather than trying to like life hack our way out of just being the way that you are. Along with that, the third reason that you might be failing at your New Year's resolutions is that you're trying to do it the way that neurotypicals do. It's very, very common for this time of year to be inundated with advertisements and sales and promotions for things like daily planners and notepads and, you know, like routine building and chore charts and sticker charts and things like that. And don't get me wrong, those can be useful tools for neurodivergent people too, depending on like what your affinity is for different activities. But I do want to caution people, because the thing about ADHD is that it oftentimes comes coupled with an impulsivity, which means that we might have a hard time with shopping and buying things online and like impulsively purchasing things, because this will be the thing that makes me, you know, again, not neurodivergent, that will make me not have ADHD, and I feel like my brain won't be a mess, right? And like rarely, if ever, is that true. Don't get me wrong, I've spoken on the channel before about how buying tools and assistive devices can be very much game-changing for ADHD, but I do want to caution people against doing the thing where we fill our Amazon cart with things that we're like, this will fix it, and like maybe it won't though, right? Like I am the person who buys a new planner every year. Like in the last 2 or 3 years, I finally stopped doing that, because I told myself, like, Mickey, you never use them. Like you never ever fill them out. If anything, you fill out one page so that you ruin it and you can't even give it to a friend. And so like I've just accepted that paper planners are not my thing. And so what I've started doing instead is creating a digital planner that I share with my partner, who can help to keep me accountable and remind me that it exists. And that's a way that I can create some routine and some order, and also help with my memory deficits. But it's not trying to force me into a neurotypical bubble of like, I'm going to sit down every day and fill out my planner and highlight these things, because the novelty of that will wear off so fast that I'll stop using it almost immediately. And I want to be clear, you don't have to do things the way that I do things. It's very important for us to be in touch with what specifically works for us. So do some thinking about that. Maybe ask your support system what they've noticed you seem to be successful with, but give yourself the freedom to say that my routine, my goal setting, my goal achievement probably won't look like neurotypical people's, and that's fine, right? That's okay. Again, I think we as a culture should do a lot of unlearning about this idea that neurotypical goal accomplishment is the standard that we should all be aiming for, and rather be accepting that people, just as human beings, are vastly different from one another and will need different things, will require different supports, and will find success along different avenues. So if you find yourself feeling drawn at this time of year to doing like the neurotypical goal setting, I want to encourage you to pause and like, first of all, give it a couple of days on whatever you have in your Amazon cart. But second of all, to do some deep reflecting about what has been successful for me in the past, right? As helpful hints, people with ADHD often find competition and newness, like we talked about, to be particularly useful in the realm of goal setting and goal achieving. So making a competition with yourself or with someone else. For example, I hate flossing my teeth because it's really boring, but Erin and I set up a flossing competition where we would just like leave a tally mark on the mirror every time we floss, and whoever won at the end of a certain amount of time got to choose, like, I think it was a date night or something. And so that was very helpful for me because I love winning at things. And so you can sort of set your goal setting or goal achievement up in that way. But again, do some thinking and meditating about what specifically works for you, and really try to not pressure yourself to be neurotypical about it, because again, you're just not, and that's fine. The fourth reason that your goals might be failing, oh, I just completely forgot what it was. That's so annoying. The fourth reason that your goals might be failing is because you're sensitive to rejection or failure. One of the things that's a very common feature of ADHD is something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. There's interesting and like somewhat debated research about it, but it does seem to be a key feature or like a consistent is the word I'm looking for, consistent feature among people with ADHD, which is that we struggle with perceived rejection, actual rejection, and especially things like failure. It's also very common for there to be an overlap in the gold star high achieving student and the ADHD neurodivergent world. And so these two things can kind of combine to make like a very, very emotionally overwhelming response to things like failure or like falling off the bandwagon, essentially. I want to encourage people to be aware of this because the reality of goal setting generally, but especially about like year-long goals, is that you're gonna fall off the fucking bandwagon, right? Like neurotypical or neurodivergent, regardless of what your neurology is, we're all going to fall off the bandwagon at some point. The statistics bear this out pretty reliably, even amongst neurotypical people, something like 20% or something. I'll link a thing in the description, but fairly large percentage of people fall off their New Year's resolution goals by the end of January, y'all. So like setting year-long goals is just a difficult thing to do. And in, the realm of trying to be supportive of your neurodivergent brain, it's helpful to be aware of and to do some conscious working around our sensitivities in this area. Because first of all, you're allowed to feel how you feel, right? Everybody is entitled to their emotions. But being aware that that's probably going to come up for you and having a conversation with your support system, doing some thinking or journaling about how I want to respond in a kind and compassionate way to myself, not if, but when that happens, and setting up some, like bumpers essentially can go a long way for when you do fall off the bandwagon or you forget about something or, things are just maybe not progressing as fast as you wanted them to. Having that plan in place is so helpful because it can help to ease this feeling of rejection and can make that a little bit less stingy and also increase the odds that you're going to be in a mental and emotional place to come back to the table and try it again. The thing that's very common for neurodivergent folks around this issue is to say, I feel like I failed, or I feel like people might judge me if I failed. And so I'm running away, right? I don't want to touch it. I'm never talking about it again. Or especially for us to set goals in private. And then that way, if we do fail, we don't talk to anyone about it and we don't have to address the failure because it's very difficult for our ego and our feelings and our identity. And I want to encourage you to not do that. The truth is that we all as human beings will fail at a lot of stuff, really, for the duration of our life. That's just the way that it is. And also that's fine, right? Failure is just a thing. It's no different than making progress on something or succeeding at something or taking a poop on a Wednesday. It just is. It's just a feature of life and it's fine. It's not a big deal. And so really practice being supportive and compassionate to yourself. If you have a therapist, by the way, this is a great thing to bring up with them that hey, I'm setting a New Year's resolution about this particular thing. And I know that when I inevitably forget about it or don't make as much progress as I want to, then I'm gonna feel really bad. So if you could just maybe check in with me every time that we talk or every couple of weeks or whatever about how I'm doing with that, that would be really helpful. That's a really great way to, again, incorporate your support system and just create some bumpers like we talked about. The fifth reason that you might be failing at your New Year's resolution is that you might be setting resolutions about something that's actually a hyperfixation. I wanna be super clear, this is morally neutral, right? We all do this. I am very much the person, I think I still have craft supplies in my doom closet that are literally unopened because I convinced myself that I'll buy all of the highest quality items for this craft and I will become this craft, and then you never open them because you forget about it because the interest has waned. This is very much the ADHD way, and that's fine, right? Again, we talked at the top of the video that personally I'm just not a fan of year-long resolutions generally because it's just a long fucking time, right? So with that, I think knowing that we may or may not be setting resolutions around a hyperfixation, I think you have a couple of options here. The first of which is just to embrace that, right? Hyperfixations are fun sometimes, and as long as we're engaging in it in a healthy, mature way, in a way that's not making detrimental decisions about our finances or our safety or our attention or our bodily well-being, embracing that I'm just really into this thing right now. And so my temporary New Year's resolution is just going to be to see this through or engage in this hobby that brings me joy or really research this topic that's particularly interesting to me, right? Do that. This is why we talked earlier about leaving or freeing ourselves from this neurotypical expectation that a New Year's resolution should be 1 year long and about one thing. No, who cares, right? That's not helpful. So if you know that something is a hyperfixation for you and you're just really into that right now, then do that, right? Your other option is to be aware that your interest around that will probably wane and to, again, set some bumpers up like we talked about, but also potentially weave that into a longer term goal that's more themed based like we talked about before. If you are getting the sense that maybe your New Year's resolution has to do with a hyperfixation and you don't want to experience that feeling of just falling off in your interest of it throughout the year, think big picture, broader strokes. That's just words did not want to come out of my mouth. About like, you know, if your hyperfixation right now is like, I don't know, crafting, right? It's like needle felting. Creating a New Year's resolution theme that's about creativity generally, and then weaving needle felting into that can be a great way to give you space to engage in this hyperfixation and like bring yourself the joy of having a new hobby, but also being like, okay, when my interest in that wanes, I'm gonna do a little bit of research beforehand about like some other fiber arts, right? Like maybe I can look at some cross stitch stuff or some crocheting stuff, or, you know, something that's like sort of tangentially related to this and can kind of dovetail into a longer goal and plan of like just creating time for me to be creative or to be tactile with a hobby, something like that. So I want to encourage you again, especially in this realm of like knowing that we as ADHD people are going to hyperfixate on things, to give yourself permission to just be the way that you are, and to embrace that rather than trying to like white knuckle your way through being a way that you think is wrong. Because the truth is that having hyperfixations, again, if we're being like, you know, not making like impulsive or dangerous decisions around them, can be fun. They can be a great outlet. Personally, I think they're kind of cool. And it's just like a unique and fun feature of neurodivergency in my opinion. And so again, just I want to encourage people to embrace that and to think about how you can create a longer term, more sustainable approach to that rather than trying to like punish yourself for just being the way that you are. Okay, so listen, New Year's resolutions, first and foremost, really are an invention of capitalism that serve to fuel overconsumption and like especially diet culture bullshit. So if you are feeling some doom and gloom around them, also give yourself the out to just say, I don't want to do that, right? You're not required or obligated to engage in what is ultimately a social construction, especially if it doesn't serve you or it's not bringing you joy, then like don't, right? But along with that, again, I do really want to encourage folks to remember that the ideal solution in regards to New Year's resolutions is adding positive, uplifting, health-bringing, or health-promoting things into our life rather than trying to subtract and restrict and like limit ourselves. There's lots of wonderful ways that we can engage with goal setting, essentially is what this is. And so again, I think the advice here first and foremost is just going to be to like look inward and like really survey like, what do I need? What is supportive of me? And give yourself permission to chase after that. Along with that, obviously, New Year's resolutions can be a difficult time, or like New Year's generally can be a difficult time for people. So big love to you if you're struggling with like some triggering content and like, you know, navigating all of that. This time of year sucks, but it's going to get better. Don't you worry. In a few weeks, everybody's going to be obsessed with Valentine's Day candy and all of that stuff. So, you know, the end is nigh in a good way. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we do talk about stuff like this. And we also do a pop culture moment that I'd love to have you stay for. So share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow, and I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.
The end is nigh.